Who are you?
I'm John.
And I'm Connie. Hi.
Hi. So tonight we're talking about mental models. What billionaires use to make smart decisions.
Oh, we need that.
We do. We all need that.
I think we all need that.
We all want to make smarter decisions, right?
Yeah, regardless of whether we got money or not.
So, exactly. We make decisions all the time. We want to make the best decisions to make the best life. So, okay, let's break this down. Mental models. So, mental, we'll come back to that. What's a model?
Well, a model is something that I strive for, or a perfection maybe.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, it's a representation of a standard. Is that what you mean?
Like yeah.
A standard of beauty, or a standard of quality, or a standard.
Sure.
Okay, but it's in some way simplified. Would you agree?
I would agree with that.
I was actually thinking more of first of physical things, like an architectural model. I think everybody has seen. Whether it's in a movie, and they're going to build a big shopping plaza or a skyscraper or whatever.
Sure.
You see these models that they show people as this is what the finished project is going to look like.
Right.
The artist's rendering is another.
Oh, there we go.
We see those.
A lot of those.
We when a thing was being built near us, we saw a real pretty picture that looked like it was done.
It did.
And so
got us all excited.
But okay, so an architectural model. Let's take it back. So the average architect, I've seen a few of those, and I had some. I went to school with architecture students.
Yeah, and we also dealt with one.
And they used cardboard and an X-Acto knife, and they glued it together. And it was really rough.
Right.
I mean, it didn't look like a real building, and there was no chance you were going to confuse it with a real.
Pretty.
No, it was cardboard, but it had the shape and the relative dimensions and the
rooms and
the layout, so you could look at it and envision to some degree what the building was going to look like. It wasn't a perfect vision; it was imperfect. That's the key. A model is an approximation; it's imperfect. Okay, so what about a sketch?
Saw the supermodels.
What about a sketch?
What about
like I like to say a mental model. I'm coming back to I'm adding the mental is like the equivalent of me drawing a stick figure to represent a person, because that's about the level of quality of drawing I can do.
That's true.
It's going to be more.
There's no doubt about that.
But every artist, they generally start with a sketch, right? They have a rough sketch of what they're going to draw, and then they fill that in.
Right.
There was a very, very famous artist that sometimes just stopped at sketches, and his name was Picasso.
True.
Right?
And we've seen like Chihuly do that with glass and things like that.
Yeah,
we saw watching.
Yeah, those are very. He would sketch something out and then paint it, and then he would use that as his plan to then blow a beautiful piece of glass.
Right.
Okay, so we got that idea. So it's a simplified model, a simplified representation.
A mental.
Well, we're still talking about the physical stuff because I want to go I got two more examples.
Okay.
A map. Because this is going to lead directly to a mental model.
Okay.
So a map. Think about what a map is.
Yeah.
Right? It's a piece of paper, and it's got lines and shapes on it.
All right.
And it's got little symbols that represent landmarks, right? A river, a road,
mountains,
right?
Whatever.
But that little gray line on a map, you can't drive your car on that, right? That's not a real thing. It's a representation.
Okay.
Okay. And the little blue line doesn't actually have water flowing on it.
Okay.
Okay, so it's just an approximation.
Okay.
Right?
All right.
Okay.
Now I'm with you.
Okay.
Now what?
Well, so we'll come back to that. And the last model I wanted to bring up was the idea of a mathematical model, a predictive model, because we do use those. And here in Florida,
we have hurricanes.
We have a hurricane season.
Oh yeah.
And so they have a model that they use to look at the weather patterns around the world and predict how many named storms there will be in a particular season.
Right.
It's never dead on, right?
No.
But it's a model, and it's
an approximation.
It's an approximation, and it tends to be more accurate than just wild guesswork.
Than monkeys trying to pick out.
Monkeys on typewriters. Okay. All right, so that's some examples of kind of physical and mathematical models.
Okay.
Okay, now let's go to a mental model.
Okay.
So the idea of a mental model, what a mental model is a thinking tool. Taking that model concept of a simplified representation. Now let's take something that's complex that we need to think about and make decisions about, where all the possibilities, there's too many possibilities for us to imagine all of them and to plan for all of them. So we simplify that system to something and make some assumptions, and then we make decisions.
Out of it.
Right. We take, they're little shortcuts, basically. They're mental shortcuts or guides that will help us make better decisions.
Okay. Can you give me an example?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
With the map. There's a mental model that was created by, I just happened to have bought this book and read most of it. It was called The General Semantics. It was a guy named Alfred Korzybski. I think he was a count. Anyway, one of his most memorable statements, and that's another thing about these mental models, they tend to be memorable. Okay, is the map is not the territory.
Yeah, I've heard that forever.
Okay, yeah, you've probably heard me say it a lot. And it's a reminder, okay? So it's a way of shaping our thinking, okay? That to remind us that when we're looking at this map, this simplified representation, that it's not going to be perfectly accurate. It's not the same as the real world. And you need to trust the real world ahead of the map. If the map doesn't have a cliff on it and you come to a cliff, it's best that you don't step off the cliff. Right?
That could be good.
Okay.
That could be good, yeah.
All right.
Because otherwise,
so
yeah.
I'm just, I mean, that's stupid simple, but that is the idea of a mental model. Is to help us make better choices. Right. Yeah, don't do it. So, and that brings up a point about mental models. They are imperfect. Okay? And because they oversimplify things, any simplification is going to be oversimple in some ways, then it introduces either inaccuracy or bias. We talked about bias before, like the fundamental attribution bias, but it's gonna cause our thinking to lean one way or the other because of that simplification. Okay. And so the benefit, the guy who made mental models popular and famous, I guess, is Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's business partner. And his recommendation is to use a combination. He calls it a lattice work of mental models, so that by using them in combination, the biases will help to cancel each other out. By using these multiple models together.
Okay, got it. A better framework.
A better framework, a more complete framework.
Right. Okay, so got that.
And there's I don't remember the name, but there is a particular cognitive bias. Okay. And it's commonly expressed as, if all you've got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Okay. Okay. So if we only have one mental model, we try to apply it to everything.
That's true.
That's actually a form of cognitive bias. So some of the mental models actually are cognitive biases. I mean, there's overlap between these. Okay. So we covered one. Here's another mental model that's, I think, very commonly used regarding investing. Okay. Diversification of risk.
Right. Okay. Boy, did we live that.
The idea that you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. Could that be a mental model?
Well, it could be.
It's a little bit, I mean, it's a popular, it's a simplified saying. Right. It's also
and everybody understands it.
Yeah.
I mean, you say that and everybody goes, "Oh yeah, I'm putting all my stuff in different places."
And I've lost the word, but of what that actually is in terms of a language construct. But okay. Anyway,
sorry.
No, it's not an aphorism, but it's close. Okay, diversification of risk. Anyway, the idea that you want to spread out your risk so that if something goes wrong, you don't lose everything. Right. Right.
Right. Now, you're hopefully covering your CYA.
Can we apply that to other things? Right. 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 Okay. For example, if we were looking at the government has a plan for evacuating all the highest officers in government if we're ever under attack, right? Right. Well, I'm pretty sure they're not going to put them all in the same vehicle. right? The president is going to go in a different vehicle than the vice president, than the Speaker of the House, and so forth. So they diversify the risk. So if one of them gets killed, they don't all get killed at the same time.
Right.
Okay? I mean, that's not the most pleasant thing to think about, but it's an example of diversification.
It's an example, don't hide your jewelry all in one place.
There's a great idea.
Don't use all your credit cards in one place.
Another one is called the 80-20 rule. I think a lot of people have heard about that. We promote that in our business coaching.
Right.
To apply that. The idea being that 80% of your results will come from 20% of your effort. That's one way.
We've always said that in working with groups, that especially that 20% of the people are going to be doing 80% of the work.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
That was always.
So this 80-20 rule gets applied a lot of different ways.
Right.
And it's actually named by the Pareto principle, and it had to do with I believe land ownership. A model of how land was concentrated in ownership was concentrated in a smaller percentage, distribution of wealth kind of thing.
Okay.
Okay, but it's been applied so many ways because it's such a useful model.
Right.
It's not perfect. You can't carve it in stone and everything's always going to happen.
So 20% of my calories are carbs and 80% of my weight gain, right?
I couldn't speak to that. Wouldn't dare. So another one is Occam's razor. You heard of that?
Do you too?
Yeah, if you looked at one of the spellings of it, you'd say that trying to pronounce it.
So what the heck is that?
Occam's razor is a thing that you've heard. It's a rule of thumb or a mental model saying that if you've got two competing theories about why something happened, the simplest is most likely the one that's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
We kind of hope that, don't we?
Well,
to a point.
Well, it makes more sense in general. In other words, we can when we start imagining what might have caused something, we can go crazy with because it was raining and the lightning struck a tree and the tree fell and knocked down the other thing and the lights went out, and instead of a car hit a pole and the lights went out. Okay. Something. I'm not coming up with a great example. Okay, but the simplest explanation is usually the most likely. That is the mental model.
Cool.
And the last one, that example I've got is called margin of safety.
Okay, give me that one.
So margin of safety, the idea would be if the engineers that designed a bridge said, okay, this bridge can support 25,000 pounds.
Okay.
Well, then the signage that says, do not exceed maximum weight, they would go well below that 25,000 pounds. They would maybe go to 20,000 pounds and say, if your truck weighs more than... And build in a margin of safety.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Okay. If it's safe, if you can go around a curve in the road without skidding off the road at 45 miles an hour, they're going to set the speed limit at 35 miles an hour.
Right.
Okay. Because people make mistakes, conditions change, et cetera, et cetera.
My tires are crappy.
Your tires might be bald. So it's that concept.
Okay.
It's a simplification.
True.
But it allows us to look at something that's got a lot of variables and simplify it down to just a couple.
Okay.
So that we can make some reasonable approximations that will increase our chances of success.
And that's what all we're trying to do, right?
And that's all we're trying to do. That's all we can do. Right. Life is managing risk. Okay.
Yeah.
That's that's my mental model, and that's a thing. Mental models. I did want to say this. Thank you for bringing that up.
Come on. See how good I am?
Mental models. We all make up mental models all the time.
Right.
It's not that there's this dictionary of mental models that we all have to follow.
Right.
We do it naturally.
Right.
It's just that a lot of really smart people have over years made up some of these things that we can borrow and use. And then we can notice, but the point or the real value is A, knowing they exist, and B, using them intentionally rather than just random. So that's what mental models are. And in future videos, we are going to dive into specific ones and go in a little deeper, or talk about, one at a time, and build out a kind of a toolbox.
A little portfolio. Yes,
a portfolio. Or as Charlie Munger says, a lattice work, a framework. But if billionaires like Elon Musk and Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett and Bill Gates all swear by mental models, I'm willing to listen.
Yeah, me too.
Are you? We'll see you next time.